Okay, for our first notebook, we're going to be covering air pollution. Now, this is a very interesting data set because, well, it's a real data set. So if we take a look at it real quick, we can see, oops, oh, there's not UTF-8 encoded. So there is actually an issue with this data set where you may not be able to open it up in JupyterLab. However, you will be able to open it up in Pandas, and you also could open it up in Excel if you'd like. So let's take a look at this particular data set. And this is a CSV dataset I received from stateair.mn, and it is from the air quality monitoring station at the U.S. Embassy in Ulaanbaatar. And you can see, and it's actually combined with this dataset over here, which is a weather dataset, also from the U.S. government. Basically, what it shows you, each row is 1 hour, and you have the year, month, day, and hour, and you have a certain AQI and a certain amount of air pollution based on micrograms, actually. This is actually milligrams, sorry, milligrams per cubic meter, but typically this is reported micrograms. We're really only going to be interested in AQI because it's kind of an easier number to understand. We don't really need to pay attention to this. So I want to quickly just introduce this, what we're going to be doing for this particular sort of case study here. We're going to go over several concepts that are going to be very useful for you to be able to understand how to do for cleaning data. The first, we need to figure out how to handle missing data. Now, typically what I mean by missing data is that you may just have something like an NA or a NaN in your data, like these right here. They're literally just empty. And they're just not provided. It's an empty cell. We don't have anything there. This is very, very common in real-life data sets, so we'll be discussing various ways to handle that. And there's some subpoints here which we'll talk about. We're also going to cover finding outliers in both continuous and categorical data. So outliers meaning things that are significantly far away from the mean or average, and they're not very common. That's really what the definition of an outlier is. Now, there's some statistical definitions. You could look at things like the bottom 1 percentile and the top 1 percentile, basically. Those are typically outliers. However, it's a good idea to keep in mind that outliers are really case by case, and you should understand your data set to kind of figure out, is this really an outlier or not? Okay, now one question you might have is, why do we care about outliers? Well, typically speaking, outliers are useful if you're just doing data analysis because you want to be able to understand what those outliers are like. But conversely, if you're doing something like a machine learning model, you don't want outliers because it can skew your model, because outliers are by definition uncommon. So you don't really want to train a model to find the uncommon things. You want it to do really, really well on the normal things, right? And so that's why finding outliers and being able to handle those is a good skill. And then the last thing we'll cover is duplicate data. And we'll actually go over how to find these duplicates, because duplicates do exist, and actually how do we handle them. It's actually a relatively simple process, but it's something that is important to remember. The code at the top here of the notebook is just importing our libraries, a magic command. Also, we're going to use the 538 matplotlib style because it's nice and pretty. We'll specify a default figure size, and we'll also show all of the columns because we have a lot of columns here. So if we go ahead and run those, and we can import our data. We're using this Unicode escape format because the data set as it came from the stateair.mn, it was not properly encoded the way it was supposed to be. So I had to do this. Typically though, especially in Mongolia, you won't have this much of an issue because typically Mongolian data will be UTF-8 encoded because it has Mongolian characters in it. And then we can look at the head of the data set. And then we're going to jump right in the next video into missing data.